Hello. It was fall of my sophomore year when seemingly out of nowhere, a bump appeared on my forehead. After going to my pediatrician, who referred me to a dermatologist, who referred me to a plastic surgeon, it was confirmed by all three professionals that I had a growing cyst on my forehead and was going to get it removed in a rather quick and trivial procedure. The procedure went smoothly and I was back on with my life, back at school the next day and into club volleyball tryouts that weekend. My mind never once drifted back to the cyst because why would it? It was out of my head, in the past, gone. However, that Sunday, I was greeted by both my mom and dad waking me up. It was in that moment that my world shattered and they'd given me the news. They told me that the doctors had called with my cyst biopsy and it was in fact not a cyst at all, but a mass of cancerous cells. See, when I was 4 years old, I was diagnosed with leukemia, a type of blood cancer. After 2 years of chemotherapy, extensive stays in the hospital, and losing my hair twice, I had reached remission where I stayed there for 11 years until this bump on my head surfaced. Doctors call me a medical phenomenon because the likelihood of a leukemia relapse after 11 years in remission is almost 0 to none. To this day, doctors still do not know if the mass on my forehead had been a reoccurrence of the leukemia I had when I was 4, or if it was a completely new disease. However, whichever way you looked at it, I had been dealt a very unlucky hand in the game of life. After receiving the news that Sunday in November of 2017, I was given 1 week before I was to be admitted into the hospital for the first of many stays in my cancer treatment. I had wanted to live life fully in that next week before I was to be contained to an 8x10 hospital room for days on end. Therefore, that Saturday I spent the day in San Francisco with my best friend Kristen and my parents. I'd wanted to experience one last day of pure fun before I was to be admitted to the hospital. That Saturday in the city gave me lasting memories that I often look back upon during the long, mundane hours in the hospital. See, in hindsight, I had been extremely overconfident in the time frame that I would be back at school and back to my everyday activities. Alone in the hospital room, I replied back to friends' texts that I would see them the following week at school. And when my volleyball teammate texted me asking if I wanted to start weekly training with her, I replied that although I was currently taking a few weeks off, I would be back on the grind soon enough and would love to start training with her. I was completely delusional to the fact that even the strongest person's body could not bounce back from cancer treatment in just a few weeks. So, when the severity of my illness finally sunk in, I was hit with a wave of overwhelming grief. It felt as if I was saying goodbye to my old life filled with friends, volleyball, and the excitement of being a kid in high school, and instead entering a new life filled with IVs, vitals, and the incessant synthetic glow of the hospital lights. As a teenager, I wanted to be experiencing football games and dances, not chemotherapy and lumbar punctures. One night, I allowed myself to have a good cry in the shower, where I complained about my horrible luck, asking the universe, why me? What had I done to not only get cancer a first time at a very young age, but now be plagued with it again at a time where I was just beginning to truly enjoy my life? I bargained and begged and pleaded with the universe to allow me to keep my extensive amount of long, curly, and thick hair that now fell out in bunches when I combed through it. However, I realized that I couldn't wish my past life back to reality. So instead, I had no choice but to push ahead. I was determined to beat this illness and, in turn, return to the person I once was. I knew that no amount of wishing or hoping could eliminate the cancer from my body. But as I felt I had lost almost all control over my life, the one thing that I still remained in control of was my attitude. See, a few weeks into my treatment, my mom asked me, "Sarah, why aren't you mad? For her, she was worried that my lack of sadness or anger felt that I was bottling up my emotions. However, I replied back to her that although being mad or angry might make me feel better in the moment, it doesn't truly change anything. I'll still be sick, but now just with a terrible attitude. I'm not saying it was easy. Constantly being in the hospital and constantly feeling sick from the chemotherapy and trying to remain positive all the while is a true challenge. But what kept me sane during those times was remembering how truly blessed I still was. I had an amazing support system of family and friends who were constantly by my side. And my lymphoma was curable, which is a lot more than many other people can say. Whenever I felt pity for myself, I would remember these things, and it would put into perspective just how truly lucky I still was. Instead of wallowing in sadness and misery, I threw my attention into much more impactful and meaningful efforts. Since my treatment for leukemia when I was 4, I had been dedicated to giving back to UCSF Benioff Children's Hospital in Oakland, the hospital where I received such exceptional support and care when I was sick. At age 10, I created my own organization, Be Strong, Give Back Happiness, based off the initial idea of selling Christmas crafts and with that money, buying presents for the children who have to stay in the hospital over the holidays. It was a simple idea, but with the help and support of my friends and family, it grew into an overwhelming success that we have continued to this day. I have delivered over 1,000 gifts to the hospital and raised over $70,000 for the hospital. With these funds, we've been able to provide financial assistance to the child's life department and oncology department. We have been able to purchase medical play kits, chemo ducts, equipment for the hospital's variety show, masks, pill boxes, and even help fund a sickle cell summer camp. My goal has always been to help brighten the days and stays of children who have to stay in the hospital, and I hope I've been able to accomplish this. So, after months in and out of the hospital, being flooded with chemotherapy, I was finally on to the maintenance phase of my treatment, which consisted of lower doses of chemo, less frequent visits to the hospital, and allowed me to return back to school. Therefore, the first day of junior year, I was back at Amador. And although it wasn't as if I had never left like I'd hoped it would be, I was still so overwhelmed with gratitude to be back at the place I had missed so much. Ironically, I did not feel as if my love for giving back wavered at all when I was diagnosed with lymphoma sophomore year. Ironically, I just founded the Make-A-Wish Club a couple weeks prior. Instead, that love was enhanced and gave me an even stronger motivator to give back to the children who have to stay in the hospital. See, when I was diagnosed with lymphoma sophomore year, I thought it would be a much easier battle to win than the first time. See, I had gone on this journey before and I now knew what to expect. I was now 15 instead of 4, with a much higher pain tolerance and increased strength that would easily get me through the rough months ahead. However, I was sadly mistaken. What I had also gained since I was just a toddler were amazing friends, a true love for volleyball, and a true enjoyment for going to school every day. Being stripped away from the things I love and contained to my house for 6 months was the hardest experience of my life. However, what I ultimately gained from going through cancer treatment a second time was that in situations where I feel so helpless and as if my life is moving in directions that I have no control over, the one constant is my outlook on life. Life is often very unfair, and it's in these moments that our perspective on life is truly tested. Choose to not let the hardships in your life crush you. Choose to let them grow and make you stronger. I promise you won't regret it. Thank you.